The Galactic Council convened in solemn deliberation, their chamber bathed in the soft glow of bioluminescent walls. The voices of representatives from a dozen species filled the air, each carrying the weight of centuries of wisdom. The subject of the day, humanity. They were not the first species to reach for the stars, nor were they the most advanced. Yet, the humans had become a thorn in the Council's side, a problem that defied understanding. Their progression is unnatural, stated Vorek, a towering insectoid from the Cthal Dominion. His mandibles clicked with irritation. In less than 200 of their solar cycles, they have transitioned from rudimentary combustion engines to near-light-speed propulsion. A ripple of unease passed through the assembly. Such a leap was unheard of in galactic history. Most species required millennia to achieve what humanity had managed in mere centuries. Perhaps they are merely lucky, interjected Laraxa, a crystalline being whose voice resonated like chimes. Luck does not last. They will plateau as others have before them. But deep down, no one believed that. Luck did not explain the humans' capacity to adapt. Luck did not account for their relentless curiosity or their stubborn refusal to accept limitations. The holographic display in the center of the room flickered, projecting images from Earth's history. Scenes of war, innovation, and exploration unfolded. A species that thrived on chaos, constantly rebuilding itself stronger after every fall. A particularly chilling clip showed a human astronaut planting a flag on Mars, the inscription beneath the footage reading, "We came because it was hard." The counselor from the Athar Collective, a somber creature with translucent skin, spoke up. They are a species of contradictions. Fragile yet unyielding. Primitive yet ingenious. Their existence is a variable we cannot predict, and that is what makes them dangerous. The room fell silent. The Council's primary concern was not humanity's technological progress. It was their unpredictability. Unlike other species, humans did not follow established patterns of behavior. Their decisions often seemed irrational, driven by emotion rather than logic. And yet, those very decisions often led to breakthroughs that defied the natural order. The Council reviewed the infamous incident at Proxima Beta. A small human exploration vessel had encountered a rogue black hole, a situation that should have meant certain doom. Yet the crew, using nothing but intuition and a series of improvised calculations, had slingshot their ship around the black hole, escaping with minimal damage. Their ingenuity had baffled even the most advanced species, whose simulations had predicted no viable outcome. This is not a species that reacts within acceptable parameters, Vorek said grimly. They are a destabilizing force. If we allow them to continue unchecked, they will disrupt the balance we have maintained for millennia. But what could be done? The galaxy had dealt with aggressive species before, but humanity was not merely aggressive, they were adaptive. Every attempt to impose control had been met with an unforeseen countermeasure. When a trade embargo was imposed, they developed self-sufficient economies. When their satellites were hacked, they reverted to analog systems that could not be compromised. The Council's archives contained reports of past attempts by individual species to subdue humanity. Each had failed spectacularly. The Charniks, a species known for their unparalleled stealth, had attempted to infiltrate Earth's governments. They were exposed within weeks, their operatives turned into unwilling sources of intelligence. The Voraks, a warlike race, had launched a direct assault, only to be met with a human response so fierce and coordinated that their fleet was decimated. "This is a species that learns," said Tilran, a reptilian strategist. "Every defeat makes them stronger. Every setback becomes a lesson. They are not like us, bound by tradition and precedent. Their chaos is their greatest weapon." The discussion shifted to humanity's psychology. While most advanced species prioritized harmony and stability, humans seemed to thrive on adversity. Their art, their stories, their very identity were built around overcoming impossible odds. Even their most destructive conflicts had spurred technological and cultural advancements. "They are not merely survivors," Laraxa observed. "They are thrivers. They do not seek equilibrium. They seek challenge. They are never content." The Council's analysts presented a chilling projection. Within a century, humanity would possess technology rivaling the most advanced species in the galaxy. Within 2 centuries, they would surpass it. And unlike other species, humans would not be satisfied with peaceful coexistence. They would explore, expand, and inevitably clash with the established order. "We must act now," Vorek insisted, his mandibles clicking with finality. "Before they become unstoppable." A plan began to take shape, a surgical strike to eliminate humanity before they could pose a greater threat. The goal was not annihilation but containment. If key figures and infrastructures could be neutralized, humanity's momentum could be halted. But dissenting voices emerged. The ambassador from the ZYNTH coalition, a species renowned for their empathy, raised a clawed hand. "Is this who we are? A council of enlightened civilizations, resorting to extermination out of fear? Perhaps humanity's unpredictability is not a threat but an opportunity. They may teach us what we have forgotten." Her words were met with scoffs. "Teach us chaos?" Vorek retorted. "Teach us destruction? Teach us resilience," she replied calmly. "Teach us to grow again." But the majority was unmoved. The fear of humanity's potential outweighed any hope of cooperation. A fleet was dispatched, armed with the most advanced technology the galaxy had to offer. It was a calculated move, based on centuries of strategic precedent. As the meeting adjourned, the ZYNTH ambassador lingered, her crystalline eyes reflecting the images of humanity's history. She saw more than chaos. She saw a species that refused to accept limits, a species that might one day lead the galaxy into a new era, if only they were given the chance. Her final thought as she exited the chamber was a simple one. They have no idea what they're about to unleash. The alien fleet arrived in Earth's orbit with precision and silence, their ships gliding into position like an inevitable storm. The initial strikes were clinical, targeting communication hubs, power grids, and key infrastructures. Cities plunged into darkness as satellites fell from the sky, and panic rippled through the population. To the aliens, it seemed like a decisive first step. Humanity, they believed, was now in disarray. But what the invaders saw as chaos was, in fact, humanity's natural state. Within hours of the first attack, humans were already adapting. Emergency protocols, long rehearsed but never truly tested, sprang into action. Civilians gathered in makeshift shelters, while engineers and technicians scrambled to restore critical systems. Across the globe, a familiar mantra echoed: improvise, adapt, overcome. In a secure bunker deep underground, a coalition of human leaders, scientists, and military strategists convened. The room was a chaotic mix of voices and ideas, each person contributing a piece to the puzzle. A general argued for immediate retaliation, while a scientist suggested hacking into the alien systems. An engineer proposed using old analog networks to bypass the disabled satellites. "We're not fighting a traditional war," one strategist said, his voice cutting through the noise. "They expect us to follow predictable patterns. That's their mistake. We don't fight like they do." The first countermeasure came from an unexpected source. A group of hackers working out of an abandoned office building. Using modified Wi-Fi signals and reverse-engineered alien code, they managed to disrupt the targeting systems of several enemy ships. The aliens, who relied heavily on centralized command structures, were caught off guard. A few ships collided in confusion, their precision suddenly compromised. In the countryside, farmers repurposed old radio towers to broadcast disinformation, creating phantom signals that drew alien forces into empty fields. In urban areas, construction crews used cranes and heavy machinery to build makeshift barriers, slowing down enemy advances. What the aliens had assumed was chaos was actually a decentralized, adaptive resistance. The turning point came when a small group of engineers managed to capture an alien drone intact. They disassembled it piece by piece, marveling at the advanced technology. But instead of being intimidated, they saw opportunity. Within hours, they had figured out how to replicate the drone's communication protocols, allowing them to intercept alien transmissions. With this newfound intelligence, humanity launched its first coordinated counterattack. A group of fighter jets, retrofitted with alien tech, struck at the heart of the enemy fleet. The attack was unorthodox and reckless, pilots used erratic flight patterns to confuse the aliens' targeting systems. What should have been a suicide mission turned into a stunning victory as several enemy ships were destroyed. The aliens, accustomed to orderly and predictable conflicts, struggled to adapt. Their fleet commander issued orders to regroup, but the damage had already been done. Their perception of humanity as a disorganized and primitive species was shattered. On the ground, the resistance continued to evolve. Scientists developed electromagnetic pulses to disable alien machinery, while civilians constructed hidden networks to share resources and information. Every attack was met with an equal and opposite reaction, each one more creative than the last. A group of college students in Japan used modified drones to deliver explosives to an enemy stronghold, while a retired submarine crew in Norway launched a surprise strike on an alien supply ship. The aliens began to realize that humanity's greatest weapon was their unpredictability. Unlike other species, who relied on rigid hierarchies and pre-established strategies, humans operated on a chaotic blend of intuition, creativity, and sheer stubbornness. Every human, it seemed, was a potential innovator, capable of turning the simplest object into a weapon or a tool. This was most evident during an incident in South America, where a village under siege managed to repel an alien squad using nothing but kitchen appliances and farming tools. The story spread quickly, becoming a symbol of humanity's resilience. "If it works, became the unofficial motto of the resistance. The aliens, now on the defensive, began to experience something they had never encountered before: fear. They had underestimated humanity's capacity for adaptation, their ability to turn every weakness into a strength. The invaders had come expecting an easy conquest, but what they found was a species that thrived under pressure, a species that refused to surrender. As the battle raged on, a captured alien officer was interrogated by human forces. When asked why they had targeted humanity, the officer's response was chilling in its simplicity. "Because you are dangerous." The humans exchanged glances, a mix of pride and defiance in their expressions. "You're damn right we are," one of them muttered. The officer's words only fueled humanity's resolve. They weren't just fighting for survival, they were fighting to prove that they belonged among the stars. Every victory, no matter how small, was a step toward a future where humanity would no longer be seen as a problem to be solved, but as a force to be reckoned with. The section ended with the alien fleet retreating to regroup, their confidence shaken. Humanity had survived the first wave, but the war was far from over. Yet, in that moment, one thing was clear: the galaxy had underestimated the resilience of the human spirit. And that mistake would cost them dearly. The alien fleet regrouped at the edge of the solar system, licking their wounds and analyzing the chaos that had unraveled their carefully planned offensive. Their commanders pored over reports, trying to find patterns in humanity's response. But what they found instead was a maddening lack of cohesion. Each human victory seemed to emerge from a completely different approach, as though their entire species were operating on an infinite variety of strategies. To beings who thrived on order and predictability, it was as if they were fighting an enemy with no central nervous system, only countless independent minds working toward the same goal. Attempts to adapt to this chaos proved futile. Each time the aliens modified their tactics, humanity countered with something more unexpected. A supply convoy shielded by advanced cloaking devices was ambushed by human miners who had adapted seismic sensors to detect their presence. A strike team sent to disable Earth's remaining power plants found themselves walking into an elaborate trap involving holographic decoys and explosives hidden in vehicles. Every step forward for the aliens seemed to be met with 2 steps back. Among the fleet, doubts began to fester. The humans were not the simple, primitive creatures described in the initial dossiers. They were something far more dangerous. A species that not only refused to yield, but seemed to thrive on adversity. For every ship the aliens destroyed, humanity found a way to build 3 more. For every leader lost, another rose in their place, often more ingenious and driven than the last. Within the council chambers aboard the flagship, the alien commanders debated their next course of action. The logical choice, some argued, was to withdraw entirely. Humanity was too unpredictable, their adaptability too great. But others, driven by pride or fear of what humanity might become, insisted on pressing forward. If the humans were allowed to survive, they would only grow stronger, their influence spreading beyond their home system like a wildfire. As the debate raged, humanity took the fight to the stars. Using scavenged alien technology combined with their own innovations, human engineers built a fleet of makeshift starships. These vessels were crewed by galactic standards, barely held together by ingenuity and determination, but they were effective. Crews of engineers and soldiers launched daring raids on alien supply lines, striking with precision and retreating before the enemy could respond. One such raid targeted the aliens' primary command ship orbiting a gas giant. A small team of humans infiltrated the vessel, using stealth technology hastily reverse-engineered from captured alien devices. Their objective was not to destroy the ship but to disable its command systems, leaving the fleet in disarray. The mission was a success, but it also revealed something unexpected: cracks in the aliens' unity. In the confusion, the humans overheard fragments of alien conversations, arguments, accusations, and panic. The once unified fleet was beginning to fracture under the strain of the prolonged conflict. Some commanders questioned the wisdom of continuing the war, while others blamed their superiors for underestimating humanity. The infiltration team returned with not just tactical data but a critical realization: the aliens were not invincible. For all their advanced technology and strategic prowess, they were vulnerable to the very thing that made humanity strong: uncertainty. Earth's leaders seized on this insight, shifting their focus from outright combat to psychological warfare. Broadcasts were sent into space, carrying messages of defiance and resilience. Humanity's victories, both large and small, were amplified and projected across the galaxy. The aliens, who had initially viewed the humans as a problem to be eradicated, began to see them as something far more unsettling: an idea. For the first time in galactic history, the Council's carefully maintained order was being challenged not by brute force but by a species that refused to conform. Humanity's defiance resonated with other civilizations, many of whom had grown weary of the Council's rigid control. Whispers of rebellion began to spread, inspired by the humans' audacity. Back on Earth, the war was far from over, but the tide had shifted. Factories worked around the clock, churning out weapons and starships. Scientists pushed the boundaries of what was possible, often at great personal risk. Civilians contributed in any way they could, whether by growing food for the resistance or building shelters for the displaced. Humanity had become a singular force, united not just by the need to survive but by a shared belief in their right to exist. The aliens, meanwhile, found themselves trapped in a war they could no longer control. Their fleets were stretched thin, their resources dwindling. The very chaos they had sought to exploit was now their greatest enemy. In a desperate move, the alien leadership authorized an all-out assault on Earth, hoping to end the conflict with a single decisive blow. But humanity was ready. Using intelligence gathered from previous encounters, they had fortified their defenses, turning the planet into a fortress. When the alien fleet arrived, they were met with a coordinated barrage of missiles, energy weapons, and orbital mines. The battle was brutal, with heavy losses on both sides. But for every ship humanity lost, another seemed to rise in its place. For every human who fell, 10 more took up the fight. The aliens, who had once viewed humans as a nuisance, now saw them as an unstoppable force, a species that refused to die. As the battle reached its climax, a single human ship broke through the alien lines, carrying a message to the Council. It was a simple ultimatum: leave or face annihilation. The Council, battered and humiliated, had no choice but to withdraw. For humanity, the war was far from over. The galaxy was vast, and the Council's influence still loomed. But in that moment, they had achieved something extraordinary. They had not just survived, they had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with, a species that could not be subdued. The aliens retreated into the void, their fleets shattered and their confidence broken. And as humanity began to rebuild, one thing became clear: the galaxy would never be the same again. The aftermath of the alien withdrawal was far from a triumphant calm. Earth was a patchwork of devastation and resilience, its surface scarred by orbital bombardments and ground conflicts, but its people unbroken. In the ruins of once great cities, survivors sifted through rubble, not in despair, but with purpose. Humanity was in motion, building anew with the grim determination born from the knowledge that this was only the beginning. In underground bunkers and repurposed factories, engineers and scientists analyzed the spoils of war. Alien wreckage was scattered across continents, and every piece was a puzzle waiting to be solved. Teams worked day and night to reverse engineer their technology. Energy weapons were dismantled to understand their power sources. Propulsion systems became blueprints for the next generation of human spacecraft. Even alien biological samples were studied, not out of curiosity, but with the intent to understand the weaknesses of an enemy that would surely return. For every technological breakthrough, there was a sense of urgency. The galaxy was vast, and humanity had learned the hard way that they were not alone. The aliens' retreat was not a surrender. It was a regrouping. They would come back, and when they did, humanity needed to be ready, not just to survive but to fight on equal footing. Diplomatic channels, once used for trade and alliances between nations, were now repurposed for a new kind of outreach. Messages were broadcast deep into space, not as pleas for help but as declarations of defiance. "We are here," the messages said. "We will not be erased." These transmissions were met with silence at first, but soon, faint replies began to trickle in. Other species, some subjugated by the alien council and others hiding in the shadows, responded cautiously. The first contact came from a small, nomadic species living on the fringes of the council's control. Their ships were old and fragile, their people weary from centuries of oppression. But they brought with them stories of resistance crushed, of civilizations wiped out for defying the council's iron rule. They warned humanity of what was to come, but they also offered something invaluable: knowledge of the council's weaknesses. Humanity's leaders convened in secret meetings, debating their next move. Some argued for isolation, for fortifying Earth and its colonies and waiting for the inevitable return of the alien fleet. Others saw an opportunity, a chance to strike first, to take the fight to the council before they could recover. The debate was fierce, but in the end, a consensus emerged. Humanity would not wait for the storm to come to them. They would become the storm. The first step was unity. Nations dissolved their borders, pooling resources into a single global effort. Factories were repurposed to build starships, weapons, and advanced defense systems. The remnants of Earth's military forces were reorganized into a unified fleet, their ranks filled with veterans of the alien war and new recruits inspired by tales of defiance. But humanity's greatest strength was not in its military might. It was in its people. Scientists pushed the limits of alien and human technology, creating hybrid systems that were more advanced than either. Engineers developed modular designs, allowing starships to be repaired and upgraded in the field. Even artists and writers played their part, creating propaganda that inspired not just humans but other species to resist the Council's tyranny. The first human-led coalition fleet launched 2 years after the initial invasion. It was a ragtag armada of Earth-made ships, salvaged alien vessels, and contributions from allied species. Their mission was not conquest but disruption. They targeted key Council installations, supply lines, and communication hubs, spreading chaos and forcing the Council to divert resources away from their war preparations. These strikes were surgical and relentless, and they had an unexpected side effect. They inspired rebellion. Across the galaxy, suppressed civilizations began to rise up, emboldened by humanity's audacity. They saw in the humans something they had long thought impossible, a species that could challenge the Council and win. The Council's response was swift and brutal. They deployed fleets to crush the uprisings, leaving trails of destruction in their wake. But for every rebellion they crushed, 2 more rose in its place. The galaxy was changing, and the Council could no longer control it. As humanity's influence grew, so did its understanding of the Council's structure. The Council was not a monolith. It was a fragile alliance of species, each with its own agendas and fears. Some Council members were reluctant participants, forced into compliance through threats or coercion. Others were true believers in the Council's doctrine of order and control. Human intelligence operatives exploited these divisions, sowing discord among the Council's ranks. Secret deals were made with sympathetic factions, promises exchanged in the shadows. The Council, once a symbol of unyielding authority, began to fracture under the weight of its internal conflicts. The final act of humanity's campaign was not a grand battle but a calculated strike at the heart of the Council's power. Its central command station, a massive structure orbiting a distant star. The station was a fortress, protected by fleets and defense systems far beyond anything humanity had faced before. But humanity had something the Council lacked: desperation and ingenuity. The assault on the station was a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. Decoy fleets drew away defenders, while stealth ships infiltrated the station's outer layers. Human forces fought with everything they had, using tactics that defied logic and expectation. Explosives hidden in the wreckage of destroyed ships, EMP pulses that temporarily blinded enemy sensors, even kamikaze maneuvers when all else failed. The battle lasted for days, but in the end, humanity prevailed. The station's defenses were breached, its command structure dismantled. The Council, once an unassailable force, was left leaderless and vulnerable. The aftermath of the war was both triumphant and sobering. Humanity had secured its place in the galaxy, but at a great cost. Millions had died, and Earth itself was forever changed. Yet, in their victory, humanity had achieved something extraordinary. They had not just survived. They had inspired a galaxy to believe in the possibility of freedom. As the dust settled, humanity faced a new challenge: building a future in a galaxy that was no longer bound by the Council's control. It was a daunting task, but one they approached with the same determination that had carried them through the war. And so, humanity's story continued, not as conquerors or victims, but as a force of nature, an unpredictable, unstoppable force that had changed the galaxy forever.